I woke up one Tuesday morning with no particular reason to think that today would be any different. The coffee machine hummed in the corner of the kitchen. The sound of the morning traffic outside filtered through the windows, and for a split second, everything felt normal. But normal didn't last long. I've always been the kind of guy who notices details. It's a curse and a gift. So, when I entered the kitchen that morning and saw the cup she always used to drink her coffee, still on the counter from last night, untouched, I felt something deep in my stomach, a tightening that made me pause. It wasn't that big of a deal, was it? Just a forgotten cup. But something inside me told me to pay attention. I told myself to calm down. Maybe she had just gone to bed late, or maybe she'd gotten caught up in work or something. But as the day went on, I started noticing more things. Little things that didn't add up. Things I had never paid much attention to before because they were just part of the routine. Her phone was on the counter, face up. Normally, she'd keep it with her, tucked in her purse or by her side. But this time, it was left there, silent, still. And then there was the text, a single message that caught my eye. It was from someone named T. I didn't mean to look at it, I really didn't. But when I saw that, something shifted. My gut clenched and my mind raced. What was going on? When she walked into the kitchen a few minutes later, I didn't say anything. I wanted to ask her about the cup, about the phone, about the text, but something held me back. A sense of dread, maybe. I could feel it crawling up my spine, tightening in my chest. She smiled at me, but it wasn't her usual smile. It was small, absent. She didn't even make eye contact. "Morning," she said, her voice flat, distant. "Morning," I muttered, staring at my coffee. I tried to shake it off. After all, it was just one morning, right? Nothing to worry about. But as the day stretched on, that feeling only grew. The house felt quieter than usual, emptier somehow. She spent the rest of the day in the bedroom, like she had the past few weeks. The door was closed, the blinds drawn, and I couldn't help but wonder if she even noticed I was there anymore. I was in the living room, trying to focus on work, but all I could think about was that text. I went to bed early that night, hoping to sleep it off. But when I got into the bed, I noticed that she wasn't there. She was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "Hey," I called out, trying to sound casual, though my voice cracked. "Everything okay?" She didn't respond. That was the moment it hit me. The silence, the distance. It wasn't just about not talking. It was about something deeper, something I wasn't supposed to see. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the dark weight of doubt pressing down on me. What was she doing? Why was she so distant? Why was she acting this way? I couldn't put it together. And when she finally climbed into bed next to me, she still didn't speak. She turned away, her back to me, just like every other night recently. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to confront her, but the words stuck in my throat. What was I supposed to say? I noticed the text, or what's going on between us. I didn't know if I was ready to hear the truth. That night, I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I got up, quietly slipped into the living room, and grabbed her phone. I know. I shouldn't have done it. But in that moment, something inside me snapped. My hands shook as I unlocked it. It was the only way I could understand what was happening to her, to us, and there it was. The text I had seen earlier, but now, as I looked at it, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just an innocent message. It was a long thread of messages. The kind you send when you're not just talking to a friend. It was intimate. It was personal. And it wasn't from anyone I recognized. My heart hammered in my chest as I scrolled through the conversation. My head was spinning, and my fingers trembled with every word I read. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. That's when I understood. She wasn't just ignoring me. She wasn't just being distant. She was actively hiding something from me. And the worst part? I had no idea what it meant for our marriage, for the life we had built together. The truth was slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know if I could stop it. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not until I had the full picture. Not until I could see the whole truth for what it was. And so, I waited. But I wasn't the same after that night. I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't pretend I didn't see what I saw. And in that silence, I realized something that terrified me. This was the beginning of the end. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My mind was racing, jumping from one thought to the next, unable to settle. It wasn't just the text that kept me awake. It was the realization that everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Lydia, might be a lie. The next morning, I pretended like everything was fine. I made coffee, tried to act normal. She was in the kitchen, like always, scrolling through her phone. The way she avoided looking at me, her body language so closed off, made me feel like a stranger. It had been like this for weeks, but now, with what I knew, the distance felt even more unbearable. I watched her from across the room, noticing every little thing. The way she held her coffee cup, the way her fingers tapped rhythmically on the edge of her phone. These were things I had never noticed before, but now they seemed to scream at me, like symbols of the distance between us. I could have confronted her then. I could have asked her straight out about the texts, about what was really going on. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something inside me told me that I wasn't ready for the truth, and deep down, I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear it yet. Instead, I asked her about her day, something I used to do without a second thought. "How's work going?" I said, trying to sound casual. But she barely glanced up, mumbling something about deadlines and being overwhelmed. That was it. Just a few words, barely enough to keep the conversation alive. I should have pushed further. I should have forced her to talk, to look me in the eye and tell me what had been going on. But I didn't. I didn't want to force her into a conversation she wasn't ready to have. And yet, as I sat there sipping my coffee, I could feel the air between us thickening. Lydia had always been the one who made things feel easy. We never had to work at communication. At least, that's what I thought. We understood each other without words. Or so I believed. But now I was starting to see how fragile everything had been. I was starting to wonder if she had been checking out for longer than I realized. Maybe all this distance wasn't new at all. Maybe I had just been blind to it. The day dragged on. She spent most of it in the bedroom, working or pretending to work. I kept to myself, pacing around the house, trying to keep busy. But every time I passed her bedroom door, I caught myself listening for sounds of movement. Anything that would tell me she was still there, still part of the same world as me. At dinner, we barely spoke. I set the table, heated up leftovers, and she ate without a word. I didn't know what was worse, the silence or the fact that neither of us seemed bothered by it. I tried to keep my mind off things, tried to convince myself it was just a phase, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The truth was undeniable. Something had changed, something that neither of us could ignore any longer. Later that night, I sat in the living room, staring at the TV but not watching it. My mind was elsewhere, trapped in a loop of questions I didn't have answers to. Had I done something wrong? Had she? What happened to the woman I married? The woman who used to laugh at my jokes? The woman who used to hold me close at night? I couldn't remember the last time she'd done that. Held me. It felt like ages ago. Around midnight, I heard the faint click of her phone screen from the bedroom. I wasn't sure if she was awake or not, but I couldn't help myself. I stood up, walked toward the bedroom door, and paused. There she was, sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone in her hands, her face illuminated by the screen. I couldn't see what she was looking at, but it didn't matter. I knew. I knew she was talking to someone else, someone she wasn't telling me about, someone who made her forget the man she married. I stood there, frozen, torn between the urge to confront her and the fear of what I might find. "Lydia," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer. She didn't even look up. For a moment, I thought about walking away, about leaving her alone with her secrets, but something in me snapped. I had to know. I had to understand. I opened the door slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, and stepped inside. She didn't react, didn't even flinch. "You're still up," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything okay?" She just shrugged, the same indifferent gesture she had given me countless times in the past weeks. "I'm fine," she muttered, not even looking at me. I couldn't stand it anymore. The coldness, the distance, the lies, everything. I took a deep breath and walked toward her. "Who is he, Lydia?" I said, the words coming out harsher than I intended. "Who is the person you've been texting? Why are you doing this?" She didn't react at first, and for a moment I thought she might stay silent forever. But then she finally spoke. Her voice was small, almost trembling. "It's not what you think," she said. "It's not what you think at all." I had asked the question, and for a long, uncomfortable moment, Lydia didn't answer. Her fingers tightened around the phone, but she didn't put it down. She kept staring at the screen, her eyes vacant, as if the words I'd just spoken hadn't even registered. I stood there, waiting, my mind racing. The silence between us felt thick enough to choke on, suffocating every ounce of air in the room. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she put the phone down gently on the nightstand. Her hands trembled as they rested on her lap. I could see the weight of whatever she was holding back in her posture, in the way she refused to look at me. She was avoiding my gaze like the plague, as if looking into my eyes might force her to face something she wasn't ready to confront. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered, barely audible. It's just, I'm sorry. Her voice was fragile, almost as if she was apologizing for something too big to apologize for. I couldn't process what she meant, couldn't make sense of her words. It felt like she was trying to explain something without truly saying it. Sorry for what, Lydia? I demanded, my frustration spilling over. Sorry for what exactly? For ignoring me? For pretending everything was fine when it wasn't? Or sorry for whatever this is? I gestured toward her phone, the source of the cold void that had suddenly grown between us. She flinched at my words. She hadn't expected this. I could see that much. But I couldn't stop myself. The knot in my stomach was so tight, it was choking me. I had to know. I had to hear it from her, even if it broke me. Lydia sighed deeply, and for a moment, I thought she wouldn't say anything else. But then she spoke, her voice trembling. It's not a person you think. Not in the way you think, she said, her eyes fixed on her hands. It's someone from my past, someone I never thought I'd talk to again. I blinked, trying to understand. Someone from your past? I repeated, as if hearing the words would help me make sense of the situation. Who? What does that even mean? Are you telling me that you've been, what? Talking to an ex? Lydia shook her head quickly, almost too quickly. No, not an ex, not like that, she insisted. It's complicated. Complicated? I repeated, my voice rising now. How is this not complicated? You've been hiding this from me for weeks, Lydia. What the hell is going on? She looked up at me then, her eyes glistening with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt, fear, or maybe just exhaustion. I didn't want to hurt you, she said quietly, as if it was supposed to make everything okay. I never wanted you to find out like this. Then why the hell didn't you talk to me about it? I snapped. Why didn't you tell me before it got to this point? I couldn't. I didn't know how. Her voice faltered, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her composure. She was unraveling before my eyes. I didn't know how to explain it, and then I thought maybe I could fix it on my own. But it just got worse. I just kept falling back into it, into him. I stared at her, completely confused. Him? You're talking about someone... a man? She nodded, her lips trembling. Yes, a man, from when I was younger. From before we even met. She cut herself off, as if she couldn't bring herself to say the next part out loud. Before we met? I echoed. What are you saying, Lydia? You've been in touch with some guy you knew before we got together? That's it? She swallowed hard. It's not that simple, I swear. He reached out to me, and at first I didn't respond. But then one day I did, just to see how he was, just to catch up. The blood in my veins turned cold. My mind scrambled to put the pieces together. This wasn't just an old friend. This wasn't a casual conversation. This was something else, something far deeper, something that felt like betrayal. You've been talking to him, I said, my voice low, dangerous. You've been talking to him like you've been talking to me. Her silence said everything. It was the silence that confirmed my worst fears. I didn't need her to say anything more. The damage had already been done. I didn't mean for it to get like this, she continued, her voice shaking. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep it all together. But he's different now. He's not who he was when we were younger. And I started getting sucked back in, Simon. I started feeling things I didn't want to feel. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My stomach churned, and my heart sank into the pit of my chest. I had always known there was something off, something beneath the surface, but hearing her admit it so plainly made it real, made it undeniable. You've been in contact with him behind my back, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, trying to hold on to any semblance of control. And you've been keeping it a secret this whole time. While I've been sitting here, thinking everything was fine. I'm sorry, Simon. I truly am, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how to stop it. It felt like I was losing myself. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was okay. For a moment, all I could do was stare at her, trying to process what she had just confessed. The woman I had married, the woman I had trusted with everything, was now a stranger in front of me. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was shattering. I didn't know how to respond. What do you say when the person you love tells you they've been hiding something like this? I was angry, yes. But more than that, I was heartbroken. I was betrayed. I can't do this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't keep pretending this isn't happening. She started to cry then, the tears flowing freely down her face. But it didn't matter. I didn't know what to say to comfort her. The weight of her actions, the betrayal, was too heavy for words. And just like that, I realized this was the beginning of the end. The silence between us was deafening. Lydia sat there, her body trembling, her hands clutching the edge of the bed like it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. She had just confessed something so monumental, so far beyond what I'd imagined, that I couldn't fully process it. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal, but I was still standing there, paralyzed by the enormity of it all. I didn't want it to happen like this, she said, her voice barely a whisper, still choked with emotion. I never wanted you to find out this way. You think this was something I wanted to find out? I snapped, unable to keep the anger from creeping into my voice. Do you honestly think that this is just something I'm supposed to brush off? You've been hiding this from me for how long, Lydia? Weeks? Months? I thought we were building a life together. Her face contorted with regret, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Not right now. Not with everything she had done, everything she had kept hidden from me. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I really am. I thought I could stop it, but I couldn't. And now I've ruined everything. I could see the tears in her eyes, and I could feel the weight of the guilt pressing down on her. She was clearly torn apart, but there was something in me that just couldn't sympathize. Not yet. How could I? She had crossed a line that I wasn't sure could be repaired. She had been keeping secrets from me for so long, and it felt like I had been living in a lie. My heart, once so sure of us, now felt fractured beyond recognition. Lydia, you don't get it, I said, the words coming out raw. This isn't about some stupid mistake. This is about you choosing to keep me in the dark. You've been letting this thing eat away at us while I'm here, completely unaware, trying to hold everything together. And you couldn't even tell me. You couldn't even give me the decency of the truth. Her breath hitched in her chest as she looked down at her hands, trying to find the right words to say. But there was no easy way out, no way to undo what she had done. I never meant to hurt you, she murmured, her voice so small, so fragile. I don't know how it happened. It was like I was being pulled back into something I thought I had let go of. It felt wrong, but at the same time, I couldn't stop. The words were there, but they didn't make sense. I couldn't connect the dots. I couldn't understand how someone could go from being so fully present in a relationship to hiding behind text messages and lies. How could she have felt so disconnected from me? How could she have reached out to this person, someone from her past, and thought it was okay? I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. What do you expect me to do with this? You've given me nothing but excuses. You've been slipping further away from me, and now you want me to just forgive you? Like it's that easy? She looked up at me then, her eyes searching mine for some kind of understanding. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, her voice steadying for the first time. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I need you to understand, Simon. It's not what you think. It wasn't about him. It was about me, losing myself in a place I didn't know how to get out of. And I wasn't honest with you because I was afraid of what it would mean for us. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to control the storm inside me. Afraid? I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. You were afraid? Well, I'm afraid too. Afraid of what you've done. Afraid of the lies you've built up between us. And now, I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can look at you the same way. She reached out for my hand, but I pulled back before she could touch me. The space between us felt vast, unbridgeable. The woman who had once been my everything was now a stranger who had made a choice to hide things from me, to protect herself at the cost of everything we had built. I never wanted this, she whispered, her voice breaking again. I never wanted to hurt you. I stared at her, my heart aching, but also hardened. You did hurt me, Lydia, I said quietly, the weight of the words sinking in. You don't get to do something like this and expect everything to just go back to normal. I don't know what we are anymore. I don't know who you are, and I don't know if I can keep doing this with you. Her eyes widened as if the realization had just hit her, the magnitude of what she had done and how much it had shattered us. She had thought that by confessing, by finally coming clean, everything would be fixed, but that wasn't how this worked. You don't just tear someone's trust apart and expect them to fall back into place, like pieces of a puzzle. "I understand if you can't forgive me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I was distracted, even when I was slipping away, I still loved you." But her words didn't reach me, not anymore. The love I had felt for her had been tainted by everything she had hidden, everything she had kept from me. The doubt, the uncertainty, the fear. Those were the emotions that now filled the space between us. I took a step back, suddenly feeling suffocated by the weight of it all. "I don't know if I can believe that anymore," I said quietly, the truth of the words stinging. Lydia's face crumpled as tears welled up in her eyes. "Please don't leave," she begged, her voice pleading. "Please, I don't want to lose you." But I was already turning away. The truth had come out, and I didn't know if there was any coming back from it. "I can't stay, Lydia, not like this. Not anymore." And with those words, I walked out the door, leaving behind the life we had once shared. I didn't know where I was going, or even what I was hoping for. I just needed to get away. The air outside felt colder than usual as I walked down the quiet street, my mind still spinning with everything Lydia had confessed. The streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, and with every step, I could feel the weight of the last few hours pressing harder on my chest. I should have felt angry, and I was. Fury boiled in my veins. But it was the numbness that hit me first. I felt empty, hollow, like a part of me had been ripped away, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to fill the void. I kept replaying the conversation in my mind. Every word she said, every excuse, every half-hearted apology. I could still hear her voice, her trembling hands reaching out for me, asking for forgiveness. But it didn't matter. I was too far gone. My trust in her had been shattered beyond repair. And no matter how much she pleaded, I didn't know how to undo what had been done. I thought about the years we had spent together, the vacations, the late-night talks, the plans we had made. It felt like a distant memory now. Was it all a lie? Was everything we had built nothing more than a facade? My chest tightened as I walked aimlessly, the cold air biting at my skin. I ended up at a small bar on the corner of the street. It wasn't anything fancy, just a place where people went to drown their sorrows or lose themselves for a while. The dim lights inside flickered as I pushed open the door, and the smell of stale beer and cheap whiskey hit me immediately. I didn't even care. I needed something, anything, to take the edge off the storm swirling inside me. I ordered a drink and sat at the bar, staring at the amber liquid in front of me, trying to make sense of it all. The bartender didn't ask questions, just slid the glass toward me. The burn of the alcohol didn't help. It only numbed the ache for a few moments before it returned with even more intensity. I stared into my drink, the swirling liquid reflecting the mess inside my head. The bar wasn't busy, just a few people scattered at different tables, all lost in their own worlds. I didn't care about them. I didn't care about anything. But then, as if the universe had decided I needed a distraction, someone slid onto the stool next to me. It was a woman, about my age, with dark hair and a look in her eyes that seemed familiar. She wasn't anything extraordinary, but there was something about her, an energy, a presence, that caught my attention. She didn't speak right away, but I could feel her gaze lingering on me. For a brief second, I thought she might say something, but then the bartender came over, and she ordered a drink. I half wondered if I'd end up talking to her, but I quickly pushed the thought aside. I wasn't in the mood to talk, to anyone. But then, she did speak. "Rough night?" she asked casually, her voice low but clear, like she wasn't trying to intrude, but couldn't help noticing something in my demeanor. She didn't wait for me to answer before adding, "You look like you could use a drink, or maybe a distraction." I glanced over at her, not expecting to engage in conversation, but somehow her presence seemed to pull me in. Maybe it was because I was so wrapped up in my own misery, or maybe it was the way she seemed to see right through me, but I found myself responding. "Yeah, you could say that," I muttered, taking another sip of my drink. "You know how it is. Life throws you a curveball, and you're not sure what to do with it." She nodded, the faintest smirk playing at the corner of her lips. "Life can be a real pain in the ass, can't it?" I couldn't help but laugh, though it was a hollow sound. "Yeah, something like that." For a moment, there was an awkward silence between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was like we both understood that we didn't need to say much. We both had our own problems, our own baggage, and in that moment, it felt like we could just exist together in the quiet without any expectations. But then she spoke again, her voice softer this time. "What happened? You look like someone just ripped your heart out." It wasn't a question I had expected, but it hit me hard, like a truth I hadn't been ready to face. I stared down at my drink again, my mind flashing back to Lydia's confession, to everything that had fallen apart in a single night. I didn't know if I could explain it to a stranger, but the words tumbled out of me anyway. Marriage, trust. I thought I knew the person I was with, but turns out I didn't. And now it's like everything is just broken. The woman didn't say anything for a while, just watched me with a quiet understanding. Finally, she spoke, her voice more genuine than I had expected. Sometimes we get caught up in the idea of who we think someone is. We invest so much in that image, we forget to look at the real person in front of us. But it's not always what we imagine it to be. People change, relationships change, and sometimes they break. I looked up at her then, really seeing her for the first time. There was something oddly comforting in the way she spoke, like she had been where I was, maybe not exactly, but close enough to understand. "Yeah, I guess I've been learning that the hard way," I said, shaking my head. The woman gave me a small, sympathetic smile. "You'll figure it out. Life's got a funny way of working things out, even if it feels like everything's falling apart." I didn't know if I believed her, but it was the first real piece of comfort I'd gotten all night. She didn't ask more questions, didn't push for details. She simply sat there, sipping her drink, letting me have my space, and for that, I was grateful. I spent the next few hours in the bar, talking to her off and on, but mostly keeping to myself. It wasn't about escaping reality. It wasn't about forgetting Lydia or pretending that everything was fine. It was just about surviving the moment. For that night, that's all I could do. But as I finally left the bar and made my way back to the apartment, a new thought lingered in my mind. The life I had known, the life I had built with Lydia, was gone. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something else. The night I spent at the bar felt like a blur, and yet, it was one of the only moments where I didn't feel like I was suffocating under the weight of what Lydia had done. There was something strangely liberating about stepping out of that house, away from all the lies, and into the anonymity of a random place where nobody knew my name. But the more I walked back home, the more that sense of freedom started to fade. It wasn't like I could escape what had happened by stepping outside for a drink. The reality of it all still clung to me like a shadow, just waiting for me to come back home and face the wreckage. As I stood in front of the apartment door, my hand hovering over the doorknob, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't frustrated or heartbroken. I was numb. I had heard Lydia's apology, her confession, her words about trying to fix things, but they felt like nothing more than echoes in a room that had been long emptied of meaning. I opened the door slowly, unsure of what I would find. Lydia was still in the bedroom, the door slightly ajar. I could hear the soft hum of the television, but it was clear she wasn't watching it. She was probably still awake, probably still lost in her thoughts. I could almost feel her waiting for me, hoping for some sign that we could go back to what we had before. But I wasn't sure if that was possible. I wasn't sure if I wanted it anymore. The trust that had once formed the foundation of everything we'd built together had been shattered in an instant, and I didn't know how to put it back together. I stood in the living room for a long time, staring at the closed bedroom door. I had to make a choice, but I didn't know what the right one was. Did I confront her again? Did I demand more answers? Or did I let it go, leave the apartment, and never come back? I could still hear her voice in my head, begging for forgiveness, telling me that she loved me and that it had been a mistake. But something about that felt hollow. Maybe it was the way she had confessed so casually, as if it was just a small misstep. Or maybe it was the way I'd caught her in the act, hidden behind the phone screen as if I was the last thing on her mind. I needed space. I needed clarity. But I wasn't sure if that clarity would lead me back to her or push me further away. I finally decided to go to the bedroom. The decision wasn't as simple as just walking in and talking things through. It wasn't a one-time conversation that would fix things. I wasn't sure anything could fix this. I pushed open the door, half expecting her to be asleep, or at least pretending to be. But she wasn't. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face pale in the dim light from the TV. She looked up as I entered, her eyes full of uncertainty, like she didn't know what kind of man would walk through that door. "Simon," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't move. She didn't reach for me, or try to make the same desperate plea she had before. She simply sat there, waiting for me to say something. For a long time, I didn't speak. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, pressing down on everything. "I don't know if I can do this," I finally said, my voice low, almost detached. I was surprised by how calm I sounded, but there was no real emotion in my words, just a sense of finality. Lydia's face crumbled as she took in what I said. I saw the tears well up in her eyes again, and for a moment I almost felt guilty. But then I remembered everything. The way she had pulled away from me, the texts, the lies. I remembered the empty feeling of being in a relationship where I was the last one to know the truth. "I don't want you to leave," she said, her voice breaking. "Please don't. I know I've screwed up. I know I've hurt you, but I love you. I don't want to lose you." Her words were raw, but they didn't hold the same weight as they once would have. They felt rehearsed, like she was telling me what I wanted to hear instead of what was truly in her heart. And maybe that was it. Maybe I had become so blind to the truth of her feelings that I couldn't see her words for what they were anymore. "I don't think love is enough anymore," I said, feeling the ache in my chest deepen. "You've shown me that it's not. What's the point of love if you can't trust the person you're with?" The room seemed to grow colder, the air between us thickening with every word I spoke. Lydia's shoulders trembled and she wiped her eyes, but I didn't move closer. "I couldn't. I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered again. "I never wanted to lose you." "But you already have," I said quietly, the words cutting through the air like a blade. "You already lost me, Lydia." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence stretched between us again, and this time it was louder than any argument we could have had. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling the heavy weight of the decision settling inside me. I didn't know what was next, but I knew this wasn't it. This wasn't the life I wanted, not anymore. I grabbed my things, my bag, my jacket, and walked out the door. Lydia didn't call after me. She didn't beg for me to stay. I didn't want to look back, but I did. And as I stepped out into the night, I realized something terrifying. I had never truly known her. I had never seen the woman I thought I had married for, who she really was. And that thought might haunt me forever. I didn't know where I was going. My feet moved with a purpose, but my mind was elsewhere, distant, clouded by the weight of everything that had happened. I could still feel the air of the apartment, thick with the silence after I had left. It was like Lydia's presence was still there, haunting the walls, reminding me of the person I thought she was and the stranger she had become. I didn't plan to go anywhere specific. I just needed to be away from that apartment, away from the life I'd spent years building with her. The pain was still raw, but now it was mixed with something else, relief perhaps. I had left, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel the pressure of pretending everything was okay. But that feeling didn't last long. The city streets were as cold as my thoughts. I walked for hours, trying to clear my head, but the thoughts kept circling. The lies, the betrayal, the cold, calculating way Lydia had pushed me to the edge without even looking back. And then, the thought that had been growing in the back of my mind since I left. What now? It wasn't just the marriage that was broken. It was everything. The trust, the connection we had once shared, it all felt like dust now, scattered by the wind, impossible to gather back together. And yet, as I walked through the city, the question kept echoing in my mind. Could I ever forgive her? I ended up at a small diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that was open 24/7 and didn't care much for appearances. I sat at the counter, ordered something to eat, and tried to quiet my mind. But the moment I sat down, I couldn't help but feel the void, an emptiness that felt both foreign and familiar at once. The coffee in front of me was lukewarm, but I drank it anyway, not really tasting it. I had become numb to everything, to the pain, to the anger, to the disappointment that had eaten away at me for weeks. It was easier to feel nothing than to feel everything at once. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was the first time since I left that I had thought about checking it. I pulled it out slowly, half expecting another apology from Lydia, maybe some frantic message begging me to come back, telling me that it was all a mistake. But it wasn't her. It was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated for a moment before opening the message. It was short, almost cryptic. "We need to talk. It's not over yet." My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know who this was or why they were reaching out to me, but something about the message sent a chill down my spine. It was clear that whoever this was knew something I didn't. And just like that, everything I had been trying to escape, the feelings of confusion, betrayal, uncertainty, came rushing back in full force. I stared at the message for a while, my fingers hovering over the screen. Who could it be? Who would have the audacity to contact me right now? Was this someone from Lydia's life? Someone I didn't know about? My mind raced through a dozen possibilities, but I couldn't settle on any one answer. I tapped out a reply. Who is this? I wasn't expecting a quick response, but it came almost immediately. We'll meet. I'll explain everything, but you need to listen. The message sent a shiver through me. Whoever this was, they had my attention. I didn't know if it was curiosity, fear, or something else that drove me to respond, but my next words were already written before I even thought about them. Where? The response came swiftly. Tomorrow? The same diner. 9 a.m. Don't be late. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. What could Lydia's past possibly have to do with me now? Who else was involved in all of this? The questions were endless, and yet the only thing that mattered was the undeniable pull to meet whoever this was. At some point, I paid for my meal and left the diner. The whole night felt like a blur. My mind was stuck on the message. I didn't know what kind of game this person was playing or why they wanted to meet with me, but I couldn't ignore it. I hadn't even been gone a full day, and already I was being dragged back into the mess. But I couldn't turn away. Not now. Not when there were pieces of this puzzle that I hadn't even started to uncover. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I tossed and turned, haunted by the unknown. Who was this person? And what did they know about Lydia? About us? When morning finally came, I found myself back on the streets of the city, making my way to the diner. My stomach was in knots, the uncertainty clawing at me. I hadn't told anyone about the message, not even Lydia. I didn't know how to explain it, or what I would say if I did. The only thing I knew for sure was that this meeting would change everything. As I walked through the doors of the diner, I scanned the room, looking for any sign of the person who had reached out to me. The smell of stale coffee and bacon filled the air, but all I could focus on was the weight of what was coming. And then I saw her. It was Lydia. She was sitting at a booth, her head down, her fingers nervously tapping the edge of her coffee cup. She looked up as I approached, and for the first time since I left, I saw a look in her eyes that wasn't regret or guilt. It was fear. I froze at the sight of Lydia sitting there, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and nervousness. She looked different somehow, more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. The confident woman who had once commanded every room we walked into now seemed small, fragile, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. For a moment, I thought about turning around and walking out of the diner. I didn't need to do this. I didn't owe her an explanation, and I certainly didn't owe her anything more than the silence that had been between us since I left. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the years we had spent together, the memories of love and laughter that still lingered in the back of my mind. Maybe it was the curiosity about what she had to say. I took a deep breath and walked toward her, my heart pounding in my chest. The diner was nearly empty at this hour, and the clatter of dishes and the hum of the jukebox felt distant, as if the whole world had quieted down just for us. Lydia stood up as I reached the table, her hands trembling as she fidgeted with the napkin in front of her. "Simon," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. "I didn't think you'd come." I didn't say anything at first. I just sat down across from her, watching the way she seemed to shrink under my gaze. There was so much I wanted to say, so much anger and confusion that had built up over the past few weeks. But in this moment, none of that mattered. "What do you want, Lydia?" My voice was quieter than I expected, but it was steady, calm. "Why are you here?" She took a shaky breath, her eyes glistening with tears. "I owe you an explanation," she said, her voice breaking. "But it's not just an explanation, Simon. It's the truth, the whole truth. I've been lying to you, lying to myself, and I can't do it anymore. I've hurt you in ways I didn't even understand, and I need you to know everything. No more hiding. No more secrets." I felt my pulse quicken. The words she had said were heavy, almost too heavy to comprehend. I had always known that there were things between us, things unsaid, things unspoken, but hearing her admit to it, to the depth of the lies and the confusion, made it real in a way that nothing else had. "Go on," I said, my voice hoarse. "I'm listening." Lydia looked at me, her eyes full of fear but also determination. I didn't just talk to him, the person from my past, because I missed him. I talked to him because I didn't know who I was anymore. I felt lost, Simon. I felt like I was suffocating in this life we had built, like I was losing myself in something that I didn't know how to escape. It wasn't about him, it was about me, about my own fears and doubts, and the way I had shut you out because I couldn't face what was happening inside me. It wasn't fair to you, and I am so sorry. Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just the admission of betrayal, it was the raw vulnerability in her voice, the admission of her own confusion and fear. She wasn't just trying to explain her actions. She was confessing her own struggles, her own doubts. And for the first time in a long time, I saw her not as the woman who had betrayed me, but as a person who was just as human as I was, just as lost. I didn't want to lose you, Lydia continued, her voice shaking. I didn't want to destroy what we had, but I was scared, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to let you in. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the deep regret and the longing for redemption. For the first time in a long time, I felt the walls between us start to crumble. It didn't make what she had done okay. It didn't erase the hurt or the pain, but it was a step, a real step toward understanding. I don't know if I can forgive you, Lydia, I said, my voice softer now, more contemplative. Not yet, but I'm listening. I'm willing to hear you out, and I'm willing to try. She reached out for my hand, and this time I didn't pull away. I let her fingers brush against mine, her touch hesitant but sincere. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't expect everything to be okay, but I'm here. I'm still here, Simon, and I want to fight for us, if you'll let me. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, I saw a flicker of hope. It wasn't a guarantee, and it wasn't going to be easy, but it was something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. I'll think about it, I said, my voice steady but with a hint of something softer underneath. I'm not promising anything, but I'll think about it. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation lingering between us. But for the first time in a while, the silence didn't feel suffocating. It felt like a beginning, like a space where we could figure things out, together or apart. I'm sorry, Simon, Lydia whispered again, her eyes full of tears. I hope you'll give me a chance. A real chance to make it right. I took a deep breath, looking at the woman I had once loved and still, in some way, loved now. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but in that moment, I knew that there was still hope, and that was all I needed to start rebuilding, not just with her, but with myself as well. I'll think about it, I repeated, this time with a faint smile. That's all I can give you for now? And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of the past slowly start to lift, as if we had just stepped into a new chapter. One that wasn't perfect, but one that was ours to write. The end was not the end after all. It was just the beginning.